What is going on, Diesel Nation? We're excited to have you guys with us today on the Diesel Podcast. Today I got a really cool episode for you guys. We're going to have Derek from DNR Customs on and Chase and John from Freedom Racing Engines. And we're going to be talking about Derek's UCC truck, the Billet engine that he's running. We're going to ask the guys over at Freedom Racing Engines about the engine itself, what it allows them to do for their race customers, and then also, some topics about power. What is usable power, what sort of advancements have they been able to make with designing engines and building them that can meet a wide variety of needs for diesel truck owners out there. Before we get to it, though, we want to thank you guys for helping us get to 500 subscribers on our Discord. There is so much awesome information you guys post on there with builds, questions about tuning, what turbo to run, complete restorations, engine swaps. So if you're looking to get even more information from enthusiasts that listen to the podcast, there's a code that's going to pop up on the screen. There's also a link down below where you can join. It's completely free. We've got tons of different sections, whether you own a Cummins, Duramax, Power Stroke. If there's technical questions that you want to answer, or maybe you want to ask me a question, want me to have a particular guest on, or there's a topic that you really want to hear about, it's a great way to be able to engage with us and have your requests be heard. Also, Patreon is something that's incredibly important to helping us grow. There's a link down below for our Patreon. It's as low as $3 a month. And your support there helps us to get better at what we do, to be able to bring you guys more topics, better quality audio, video, tons of different things. So we want to thank all of you that have become Patreon members, and then also those of you who have subscribed since January 2016 when we started this, and had no idea what I was doing. I just know that I wanted to talk to diesel companies and people out there and just be able to share the passion that we all have for diesel. So I wanted to thank everyone for their support over the years. All right, let's get to today's podcast with Derek from DNR Customs and also Chase Fleece and John from Freedom Racing Engines. Derek, Chase, John, welcome to the Diesel Podcast. I'm excited to chat with you guys today. One of my favorite topics is always, about power, making a lot of power. And Derek, I know you've done a lot of cool things in diesel for a very long time, but wanted to have you on today to chat about, recent record with your truck, UCC, and everything else. So welcome to the podcast, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us on.
Good to talk to you again.
Yeah, we haven't chatted in a while, Chase, and I'm going to get to you guys here in a second talking about Freedom Racing Engines, Fleece Performance. But Derek, I just wanted to start with you and tell me about the truck. Tell me what's new with it. I've seen some really cool pictures that you posted with a ton of air. I'm sure you got a ton of fuel, engine, everything else. So tell us about the truck.
Pretty much, it'd be easier to say what we didn't do to it, right? Like we. Basically left what we knew it worked for several years. The truck's kind of been the same. We left all that basically from the back of the cab back. We left that alone, cut off the front of the truck, gutted the whole inside of the cab, redid everything, took every bit of weight off that we possibly could, and still left the steel shell of the cab. And we got pretty much fiberglass every place else. We had the inside all tinned real nice. And then we pretty much built the whole front end of the truck around the new Freedom Billet engine. So we mocked that up late last fall before we did any engine dynoing, and just tailored everything around that engine and knew what we wanted to do. Like we lost a bunch of weight going from a full solid block to an aluminum engine, and just kind of refined everything and tried to make everything like just as nice as possible. Everything was, with racing, it's always rushing. Like you're always trying to just get done, get to the next event, and you half-ass stuff here and there. And we took a lot of time. Like I literally started cutting it up last August, and we didn't, I don't think we really made steam with the truck till Wagler's was almost a month ago. So that's how long everything took to get rolling.
I have heard a lot about the engine that you're running, and I wanted to ask you as a racer, what does that engine allow you to do to take it to the next level from where you were at? Because you've won UCC before, people know your truck, they know the power it makes. What does it allow you to do with your race program and what you're doing on the track?
I think the confidence of it, like we all seen some scary times on the dyno with some blocks, explode, separating, people lifting heads off, rods shooting up, like just so I think we're getting to that point where, like, think I told those guys last year on 19, like that was the last time I wanted to get on a dyno with, with that engine we already had. And it had nothing to do with the quality of what we were using. It's just the limits of, we found the limits. And it wasn't really worth it to me to really push it any further because, we've seen those guys do ultimate destruction, like with Sean Baca's engine and the guys from Power Driven. Like, it just doesn't ruin, like a block. It ruins everything. You can wreck the whole truck, and it really wasn't worth pushing the envelope any further. We did really well with it, and the aluminum engine has been, I think, a thought since probably back in 16. I think when it was probably drawn up in early 17 when we did the original 12 valve. So it was just the thoughts of, safety, being able, if we did have a failure, with the chance of seeing a rod eject out the side of that engine is slim to none. And then, we have the head all strapped down and everything. So I think the overall build process and the thought of, safety and then the ability to retain that power is what the goal was.
I wanted to transition to Chase and John here and ask you guys about that engine. What exactly is it? When did you guys start thinking about doing this? And, what does it allow you guys to do as a company to be able to offer an engine like this to somebody like Derek or other competitors that are out there for, as he mentioned, not just the capability, but then also the safety?
Well, you have to correct me if I'm wrong. I'm trying to remember what year we actually started working on that engine. I think it was 17, 18.
So rewind time a little bit here, but I actually was thinking about this the other day. I remember the initial conversations around building an aluminum Cummins block. And I had started with Freedom in 2015, and it was 2016 when the conversation started. So early on in my time here, this was one of those projects that I really realized, wow, these guys really move quick on stuff. We went from kind of talking about it to next thing I know, there's material showed up and here we go.
And to be clear, when we initially jumped into this project, a good friend of ours and, business, or customer, we're customer of them, Hazley Machine, Van Hazley approached us about doing some block work. We had the ability to do the machining and all that. And, he was splitting blocks across the main line, and he was the main customer that really needed a block. And, we went 6 months to a year working through the design process. And the block that Derek has is initially what we had decided we liked and what Van liked. And our next reiteration of this block is going to change. I'm not going to say drastically, but there's some improvements to be made. We can lighten the block up even more. But since that initial design that we come up with, we think about all that's happened. We've had COVID, we've had, all these other things in life, and the billet block, there was a massive arms race to make billet blocks, whether you were us, Shy, D&J, Wagler, you name, the people, LSM, but the amount of customers that there really is that need a billet block are pretty small, pretty few. There's, if you had 50 of these things made tomorrow, I don't think you could sell them all. There's a select group of people that need them, and we're excited to press forward and make them, because that's something I've reiterated Derek over and over again with UCC. The last thing I want to do is to have on my mind a scattered cast iron block that puts something in the stands and kills somebody. Like, that's something I don't want to be involved with. So that's the main reason we're pushing hard on making these billet blocks. And technically they're a forging. They're made from a forging.
To kind of summarize what Chase said, I mean, essentially when we started the project, we wanted to do it, but it wasn't the right time for our business.
Yeah, absolutely.
And to kind of get further into it, I think a big project for us was getting from our old facility into our new facility. And that was more important than anything going up to, we moved in here in 2019. Like Chase said, with COVID and everything else that went on, it just was something that we couldn't work on that project. We weren't ready. Fast forward, Chase, Braden, Jeff Merriman, and we sat down in my office actually and kind of had it out, like, we're either going to do this or we're not. And that's when we approached Derek and said, hey, we're going to get this thing ready. We want you to have it in your truck. You're going to be the guy that's going to take this and prove what we did with this block and, hopefully make it successful. Obviously, working with somebody like Derek, don't get too swelled up over there, little guy, but it's a blessing to be able to work with somebody like Derek. I don't know too many customers that push me as hard as Derek does. But he shows up to dyno an engine. He's here to work.
It makes my life pretty easy.
He does a good job of making us look good too. So that being said, the safety aspect of the billet block is super important to all of us. Both these guys already mentioned it. We don't want to be that company that puts stuff out there knowingly pushing the edge and possibly having a catastrophic failure. But some of the benefits are just the weight savings. I mean, Derek, seeing his truck go as fast as he did, obviously a lot of suspension and chassis work, but the weight savings is huge. And you're able to take a couple 100 pounds off the total weight of the truck just in the engine is, it's massive weight of speed. So,
and I mean, the thing makes a pile of power. We actually have confidence and we're not scared to lean on it now. The Dyno Session with that thing, it was really fun to see all the hard work over the past 6, 8, 10 years of, dynoing and coming up with a recipe that we know works and perfecting it, making changes. And Derek and I think Ryan both got to see, kind of a day in the life of what I get to do for fun, as a job. Piston, the injector combo. Derek, he already knew what it was going to do to an extent, but like Derek can answer this. The last time that cast motor was on there on fuel, we were just over 2,000.
Yeah, I think we had to lean on it, and we were like just cresting. I think we touched like 21-ish. With a real similar Charger. We had the old 102 on it before, and real similar air and our fuel's a little different, but
Old Winnie from DDP's got us fixed up with a real nice set of injectors. It's awesome. The injection rate and how that combo works. I mean, we're able to get a lot of fuel in a short period of time, and that the guys at the shop, people that don't really know engines that work for us, every one of them came down when we ripped off 2450 or whatever, something like that. They were like, my God, that thing sounds good. And
I had a buddy that lives 16 miles from here that texted me immediately after a dyno pulled and said, did you guys just dyno an engine? And I said, yeah. And he goes, dude, I could hear it clear as day. Like when I tell you it was loud, I was at my house. I had gone home and these guys made another pull on the dyno, and I live not too far, about
4 or 5 miles.
Yeah. And I was in my driveway and it was, I'm like, oh my God, that thing is loud. It's pretty remarkable.
That was a good time having Ryan and Derek up. I really enjoy the dyno sessions, and I think everybody gets a little bit out of it, and they get a lot out of it. Really, they get to see the little things that end up making a big change or a big difference.
I think in that, you'd mentioned, Chase, about, there's a select number of people, in the country that are going to need this billet block. But I was thinking of a couple things. One, like you mentioned, the safety part. And I think with diesel performance in general, how much it has grown over 5 or 6 years. it is a safety issue when you think of the RPM, the components, and it's coming out of the block and you're sitting right behind it. And, being able to do all that you can to, protect the person that's driving it or operating it. But then also with the way that you can even push the power and the performance. So I wanted to ask both of you guys, I'll start with Derek, is, when you get this motor, what does it open up to you as a racer with your air, your fuel, the other things you're able to do that you couldn't do, with a cast type block, to be able to just keep upping that power level?
I would say it goes back to just the confidence of, sitting, especially like I sit directly behind the engine, sitting in the center like a retard. But it just gives me it gives some confidence. We went out the first time, the success we had on the engine dyno, great. It gave us all a really good boost. All right, now it's my job. I got to get this thing in the truck and make it go. And then, we put it in the truck and it did everything perfect, the first couple times out. And honestly, we haven't even leaned on it yet. We leaned on it a little bit for that. We did that 444 at 171. That was almost, I think it come out to almost 3,200 flywheel. I consider that leaning on it. But when we look at our injector duration and the fuel quantity we're using of what we have on tap, the nitrous, there's a lot more. But are we going to find the limits? I think so. We're pushing them. There isn't, if there was a handful of people running at the power that we are currently, there isn't. There's only a couple people. So we're going to find those limits, and I think we'll address them, within. And I don't know how much faster I want to go in my truck. I didn't think it was going to go that fast. So, there's some other things that I got to work out within, how far do I want to push it? You know what I mean? The envelope, we had hopes. The original goal was to put this in a car. And it'll probably eventually end up in a car of some sort, either with me or one of the other guys. But, I'm glad we stuck it out with the truck, and we proved a lot of not people wrong, but just we proved we could do something that was never thought of very quick. With a lot, I don't say without a lot of effort, but without a lot of effort, I feel like there's a lot left for the rest of the season if we can keep it together and just baby step it to that next level.
Well, you got to run at least a 439 at 175.
Yeah, so we got
good on his pad.
But for us too, I consider the drag strip down at Wagglers as test number 2. Test number 1 was actually getting the thing fired up and running on the engine dyno. After we did that, we took it all apart and went through everything to make sure that we liked what we saw, and we did. Test number 3 was Derek went dyno last week, and then I think the ultimate test is at the ultimate call out challenge.
Yeah,
it's important for us because we're going to get the best data you can get, the best information you can get, which is real, actual runtime doing what we're building these things to do. So getting that information, that's only going to help us as we actually push forward on production with these blocks.
The data part is what I wanted to ask you about. Chase and John, is Lenny's been on the podcast, and he's mentioned you, Chase, and how you run the dyno, and you guys like to get the data and test things. So, from your guys' perspective, manufacturing these engines and having customers like Derek, is how excited are you guys for how far you can push really the vehicles with this foundation that you guys have with this engine?
I'm really excited to keep pressing the engine technology forward and the injector technology. Between Lenny over at Dynomite and the guys at S&S, there's been a little internal horsepower war in my building on who can build the baddest stuff, and that's been really fun. And right now those guys are outdoing one another every time I get a new set in, and that's just been a blast. And what I'm trying to accomplish here with these engines, I want to actually be making peak power at 6,500 in Derek's combo next year. Get a turbo, and get the thing cammed appropriately to where it runs up there, and inch configuration, bore and stroke. I want to spin these things, and that's what's going to keep them together and give a broader operating range to where they can actually stick the tire. Some of these combos are so hard to drive because they make so much torque. And our little buddy down in Florida, Ryan Milliken, I think that's, half his trouble sometimes is he's got more torque than he can use. So that's something that, I've been playing with quite a bit, and hopefully we can keep pushing the envelope.
Yeah, I think that's what the listeners we have that are really into high performance and they're looking at doing stuff. They're going to hear an episode like this and hear what Derek said and what you guys were talking about, and I think that's what's going to get them excited to invest in it and do it, is to be able to kind of push the envelope with it. And it seems like from the engine to the injectors, the turbos, everything kind of coming together now in a way that. It's like Derek said, how fast do I really want to go? How much power do I really want to make? Whereas before it was like, well, I'm kind of capped at this particular spot, whether it was safety or whether it was something else that would do it. So I think it's really exciting, and it's a huge story, especially in the Cummins world, is what you guys have been able to do together with the engines that you guys are making, and then, what Derek's doing on the track.
And there's a lot that goes into it too, just beyond the block. I mean, there's our Billet dry sump oil system on there. Our it's not on Derek's, but we're going to have our own, front gear housing, front covers configuration. I guess from my perspective, where I look is like what Chase's aspirations are, or his, how he wants to run these things or push them. I have to make sure that this thing's built accordingly. And we have all the right parts and pieces around it. The goal is to be able to provide almost a turnkey, but a complete setup. So we're not necessarily relying on somebody else's timeline. Like we do the things that we want to do, and we can tweak and change our parts and program how we want to do it. So
yeah, I absolutely would prefer to sell these things as a turnkey or a long block, however you want to look at it. But
because there's a lot more that goes into it than just a block. It's the combination, and that's, I think, what Chase and I've been working on since at least I've been here. Our piston has changed, and we continue to make little tweaks, and we keep finding new things all the time that it just keeps evolving and getting better and better. So.
And with UCC, Derek, you're all set, ready to go, and just ready to go compete, or you got a few other things to iron up on the truck, or how's that process going?
It's kind of in a weird state. You asked me 3 weeks ago before Wagglers, I wasn't even close to being ready at all, and I was just a hot mess. I felt better going into it 2 years ago, but then after Wagglers, everything went smooth. We did the hub dyno and pretty much proved everything that we were doing pretty much proved out as far as the kind of power we were making. And as far as the truck goes, it's real close. I'm just adding a couple sensors that we weren't able to have on there the last couple times that we want, just some more data acquisition, make Chase happy on, a drive pressure gauge. And then other than that, the truck's close. I just literally keep, I probably spend an hour or two a night just going over it. I call it cutting zip ties, trimming zip ties. Like literally I checked almost every nut and bolt on the front end the other night. And then I'm trying to get the pull truck ready too. Cause as a lot of people don't know, it's UCCs can be a two truck event. So we were fortunate enough to be teamed up with a local puller that he's got a really stout truck that's been around in the industry for a long time that we put back together. And it also has a Freedom engine in it. So we kind of got a lot to prove, coming out of our camp this year, and we really want to represent well, pretty much, and want to try to dominate in all three events. That's the end goal. There's a lot of really good competitors, and it's UCC. So if something's going to go wrong, guaranteed that's where it's going to happen. It just seems like there's always some wrenches thrown at you and curveballs that you got to overcome. So I'm just trying to get my ducks in a row and be prepared.
Well, it's going to be really exciting to watch you, Derek. And I know that, watching you compete is always something, when I tune into these things, I'm always looking to see how you did. And it's really exciting. And I know there's going to be listeners to this episode that are going to be at UCC. So Chase, and I wanted to ask you, if somebody is there, that they're going to go to the booth that you guys have, what other options do you have for someone? Maybe they're not quite ready for this billet block. Maybe it's, something else they're building. But I wanted to ask about the other options in the Freedom Racing line, kind of catalog, so to speak, of what you guys can do for, people with diesel trucks.
We definitely have some options for, your street guys. We have what we call like the street performance. Mm-hmm. Like, it's got upgraded rods, can be a girdle or factory type set with better stud, and our performance cylinder head that we offer that you can buy already. There's multiple things that we can do, whether they're, a drag racer, sled puller, or whatever. The biggest thing that as we grow as a company, some of these high horsepower, I'm going to call them like the 1200 to 1500 horsepower street engines, like, hate to say it, but those are the last things that we want to work on. They just, obviously they don't pass any sort of emissions regulations. And we're obviously dealing with things like that. They're also the hardest thing to stand behind. I don't know if that's what people want to hear, but it's the truth. It's a hard engine to support.
Once you get over that, 1,000 horsepower threshold, there's, from an engine builder standpoint, it's just not, the risk isn't worth the reward at the end of the day. So from an engine package setup, we offer everything from a stock reman engine to, upgraded stuff for better performance. Our racing engine lineup, though, is really being tailored, geared towards truck pulling and drag racing
with the billet block, ideally. And then, so any kind of like sled pulling classes, that they're still required to run a cast block, and we've got options for them for like the Lucas Oil Pro Pulling League. They have a 2.6 class and a 3.0 turbo class. We hit that hard. And then there's also a lot of brush pullers that utilize our engines as well.
I think that's a really good point that you made, Chase, because I get a lot of questions, whether it's on Instagram or Discord or email or whatever it might be, from a listener, and they haven't actually invested into their build, but they don't know where they want to be. They don't know if they want 900, 1400, 2500. And so I think, what you'd mentioned with, where is that truck going to be? What can we support? What do we want to support? Where is it going to fit into everything is really important. And I wanted to ask you, Derek, because you're a shop owner. You guys are coming in all the time, and I'm sure there's somebody who says, I want 1,000 horse. From your perspective, what, how are you guiding people, or what suggestions do you make to somebody if, they're wanting to make a lot of power, go race their truck, go all in and, build something similar to yours, or, have a separate truck to do that with, and, maybe just you get a little extra power with their daily driver, or, how does that go on your end?
Yeah, it's a lot of just educating the customer on, because there's just a lot of misconception what people see online that somebody else is doing, and the forums love them or hate them, but a lot of times there's a lot of bad information. So like, you educate the customer and like literally sit them down and like, all right, listen, what's your end goal? And like, I've been, I've had the blue truck out since 14, and I spent a lot of bad money over the years. So meaning we've done things 2 and 3 and 4 times, you know what I mean? And at the end of the day, I should have just waited and spent good money instead of having to do it 3 times. So I try to really push that on a lot of my customer base. And even if it's not my customer, I try to like help somebody out and be like, listen, I know you want this right now, but let's just look where you want to be in 6 months or a year and focus on the end goal instead of right now. And, but yeah, it's, we get customers that, have high ambitions and, low budget. And unfortunately, this is a very expensive hobby. So people, it's tough. It's just a tough game. Like, they don't realize, that, you can have, 3 48 REs, or you could just spend and get one turbo 400, so it's there's just all kinds of different scenarios. You can stick with a Borg Warner turbo, or you can spend 3 times and get a Garrett. But once you put the Garrett on there, now you're going to make 200-300 horsepower more. Now we're going to have block issues. So it's a snowball effect. And everyone that's been around the industry, that's kind of what it is. Like, you start here and it's just a snowball till wherever you want to stop.
Yeah.
It's important too for customers to understand that, shops like ours, Derek's, like, we've gone through all these pains, and like, we're resources to help guide you and give you good advice because we've done it. And to Derek's point, spent bad money more times than we want to admit.
Mm-hmm.
But that's how we got to where we were, is kind of getting kicked in the teeth a few times. But for the customer, I know I get a lot of phone calls from people that they have an idea what they want, but they don't really know how to get there. And, it's okay to call and ask questions and kind of get steered in the right direction.
Which I think there's a lot of customers that really underestimate what a good running 600 horse truck actually feels like. It's still reliable. You can use it. You get guys that call in, they're like, I need 1,000 horse. I'm like, have you experienced 600 or 700 yet? And most of the time it's, well, I've got 50 horse injectors and a Cheetah or, similar turbo. I'm like, okay, so you've got 550. I get it. Like, why don't we get you a bigger injector, get you a little bigger, fuel system, and, make 650. Like, let's give that a try first before you just dive head first into something that's going to break input shafts and throw drive shafts out and, tear up all sorts of other components. So
we get a lot of phone calls for guys that want to make 2,000 horsepower and daily drive it and pull their boat and motor home. And doesn't work that way.
Like anxiety 101. Yeah, I need 1,500 horse and I got a 40-foot toy hauler.
Usually
click.
Deep sigh.
Yeah.
Okay. So you got a minute, because I'm going to explain this and then I'm going to tell you why we're not going to do this.
Well, it's really good advice. I have a buddy that did it with his 03. He wanted 1,400. He got 1,400 and it sits in a garage because he doesn't like it. But he's already spent the money on the engine, the turbos, everything like that. And just one case of many. But I think that's where, listeners, call up Freedom Racing and just call up Fleece, if they're local to you, Derek, and they need advice. You guys are tremendous resources because you guys have done this, know what to do. And, sometimes we get caught up in, the numbers or what we see on YouTube and 1,500 horse or 2,000. It may not be exactly what we want, but it's better to find that out, I think, before you spend the money and before maybe you regret it, or like the bad money you mentioned, Eric, spending that. So I think,
and it's the customers, like, what we try to, like, they don't realize, if a customer really wants to get to that level, I try to really push on them because I've learned the hard way that, like, you have all these little babies out there that all you got to do is, like, people don't know how to work on their own stuff. So if somebody really wants to do that, get to that level, there's an education process. Like, they need to learn how to do a lot of it themselves, because as shops, like, I don't have time to have 25 babies. You know what I mean? You're lucky to have, 1 or 2, like, so that's the big thing is, like, it's a misconception online. Like, you can just have a 1,200 horsepower daily. You can't, like, you can, but you're working on that thing. The hood's up, every other time that you drive it, and you're tweaking things. And that's, a lot of people just want to press the easy button. And I really don't think there is an easy button once you get to that, get to that level.
Well, there's always a sacrifice, whether it's drivability, reliability. I mean, there's always something you're going to be sacrificing. I could go buy a 300,000 mile 6.7, change injectors, turbo, tune up, and it could make 600 horse or make 1,200, depending on where you put the fueling. And the thing we have to be cognizant of, it's 2022, and I go back to the emissions, like where we're at as a company. Those days are kind of over. So, like, I can't sell engines that are, rated to do that kind of stuff, because they're not going to meet emissions. So that's why if somebody wants something from us in that regard, it's going to be a, closed course off-road type, racing engine. That's what Freedom wants to do. And the rest of our stuff will be, what I would consider emissions compliant, as long as somebody put their components back on their truck, or it came out, went right back in a truck with emissions. But
yeah, we absolutely want to support the, hey, I just need an engine in my truck guy as well. I mean, that's where, and I think it's a good thing for our company. It's allowed us to focus more on process for, remanufacturing engines, and also focus harder on projects like the aluminum block, because that's our future in the racing world. So it's not a bad thing. You can look at it however you want, but I know internally here, we see it as an opportunity. So.
Yeah. I think that's what, the emissions thing in a larger scale is kind of done is, that 1200 horsepower, 914, it's not viable, at all. It's really the guy who just needs a new engine in his work truck, or they're going to go all in, invest in, a billet block and just have it on the track. So I think that lines up. So, I mean, I know you guys are busy. Derek's getting ready for UCC. I'm sure you guys got some engines and, some dynos things to run. So I appreciate your guys' time today. I encourage anyone, that's listening, if they got questions, call up Freedom Racing Engines. If you're in Michigan or want to take your truck up to Michigan, give Derek a call. We'll make sure and link to you, Derek, on there. But I appreciate the time, and best of luck at UCC.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Don't forget, Diesel fans, make sure and head on over to our Discord. We're going to be shooting for 600 members on there next. Want to appreciate everyone since last summer who has got on there, asked questions, said hi, told us about their truck. It's always really, really cool to hear from you guys. Also want to give a shout out to some of our Patreon subscribers: Wrights Diesel Services, Texas Diesel Supply, Kaleb, Tyler Loewen from 23 Diesel, and everyone else who has supported, not just on Patreon, but also our Discord. Subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, follow us on Instagram, Facebook. Your support is what keeps us going, keeps the content that we're generating fresh, exciting. So I wanted to thank all of you for that, and we got some really cool things planned for this year with different topics to cover, whether it's emissions, tuning, turbos, injectors, transmissions, truck builds, restorations, tons of different topics. So you're definitely going to want to make sure you subscribe and stay tuned. Until next time, keep the shiny side up.